and welcome to the Child Care Business Coach Podcast. My name is Evelyn Knight. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it. I know your time is valuable, so I always appreciate you giving me your time. Today, I have a special guest, and Connie, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Evelyn, thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited to be here to have this conversation with you. So I am Chanie Wilschanski, and I am the CEO and founder of Schools of Excellence and also the host of the Schools of Excellence podcast. So I am excited to have conversation with anyone that's doing stuff in early childhood, education, leadership. So thanks for having me today.
Oh, no problem. I know we were talking when we first met one-on-one about how you and I are so aligned philosophically, and we both are child care coaches. We do the same thing, but our philosophies and our life goals are so well aligned that we've decided to really just team up and work together to really improve the landscape of early childhood education.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to talk about conflict, and this is definitely one area that you are wonderful at, Connie. It's the topic that you love. So why don't you give us some background on that?
Sure. So I think the first thing is I know some of the people that may be listening to this, whether you're in the car, you're taking a walk, and you're like, oh gosh, we're going to dedicate a whole episode to conflict. So I want to start off by saying that the first mindset shift when it comes to conflict as a leader is to recognize that conflict is not good or bad. It just is. And for those of you that are in relationships, whether you're married, you have a boyfriend, a partner, a significant other, you know that in every single relationship, there's no such a thing as a relationship without conflict. There's no such a thing as a relationship without difference of opinion. And so knowing that conflict is an integral part of relationships helps ensure that you don't run away from conflict, but you lean into it. The couples and the people who embrace conflict and know that it's part of the relationship lean into it. They learn the skills to have difficult conversations. They learn how to manage conflict and difference of opinion and debate. It makes their relationship stronger, makes their marriage healthier, and just so much more elevated and rich. And so I want you to enter this conversation with Evelyn and I that conflict can actually be a stepping stone and a springboard for incredible, deep, beautiful relationships.
I absolutely love how you really pointed out that psychology behind conflict, because you're absolutely right. Part of the problem is the way our minds are trained as young children to look at conflict is that we put that emotional component into it. And it's the emotions that really complicate the things. It's really not the facts and the logic. The problem is we start thinking emotionally instead of logically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the other thing when it comes to conflict is starting to, and I want to walk you through this exercise right here while you're listening, is start to just recognize, okay, what are some of my default responses when I'm engaged in conflict? Do I shut down? Do I procrastinate? Do I avoid? Do I push hard? Do I, bully or boss the person? Do I push the person to do what I ask them to do, even if it violates their boundaries? Like, what do I do when I am finding myself in conflict, pushed against the wall, uncomfortable, scared, vulnerable, all of those things? Mm-hmm. So when we can recognize our default response, what happens is magical. You can actually choose to change your response because your thought and how you show up is actually a choice. It is not, oh, this is just who I am. I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. No, that is playing a victim mindset. You are a warrior. You are a warrior. You can rise up. You can choose your response. So I just always love to start with that concept.
I absolutely agree. And I know a lot of our listeners are going to think to themselves, I really can't choose. But I have to say, you absolutely can choose. And one of the examples I give people all the time is think about how you talk to your spouse or your children when you're alone at home. Think about how you talk to them when you're at a restaurant in public. We do control, right? And we have these masks and filters suddenly. That is a choice. And that there is proof that you absolutely can choose how you respond. So tell me more about how you help your clients with conflict resolution.
Yeah. So I think it's recognizing that there's 4 types of conflict. So and I'll kind of unpack a couple of them, and then we can talk about some strategies that'll help people kind of recognize, where they kind of sit within the realm of conflict. And then also talk about the positive power of negative preparation, like really preparing for, what conflict is. So the four types of conflict are task-based conflict. So this is conflict that works with, associated with different people have different ways of finishing tasks. Different people have different ways of how they respond to them being told something. So that's one type of conflict. The other type of conflict is leadership conflict. And this is what we can dial in on a lot more, which is really about people pleasing, perfectionism, worrying about what people think about us. So that's the second type of conflict. The third type is work style conflict. So this is where people have a different way of how they approach their work, how they complete their work, how they work in general within the school structure. And then the last one is personality clashes. And so that is, of course, exactly as it sounds. Someone is just more robust, more just really outgoing and energetic. And then there's someone else who's just like, please leave me alone during my lunch break. I love you dearly, but I don't want to do hugs or high fives or have any conversations. I would like to be left alone and have zero stimulation for my brain. So understanding the personality clashes is also critical. So that's the four types of conflict.
Yes. Well, and I love that you really point out the personality conflict, because that is what we see a lot of times with our staff and the children. And it's something I train a lot about on myself, especially my own staff in my childcare center, where they really need to know temperament. You need to know your temperament and the children's temperament, your supervisor's temperament, your employee's temperament, because if you do have those clashing temperament, that is where you don't get along all the time. And that's where a lot of times we'll see teachers who may not like a specific child for some reason. And it's hard to admit that, right? It's hard for people to admit like, oh, but it's those clashes in your personality and your temperament that cause those issues. So I love that you really focus on that also. It's so critical for the children. And that is, bottom line, why we do what we do is for the children.
Yeah, and I think this is a big self-awareness game, which is a skill and can be taught and trained and coached on. And so as we kind of move into this conversation, for whoever's listening, is recognize like these are skills and things that you want to work on, that you work on when you're out of survival. And going out of survival is a choice. It is a choice to decide, I am in control of my time. I am in control of my mind. I am in control of what happens. I am in charge of the decisions and the behaviors and how I choose to show up and what happens in the day-to-day. You are not in control of the government. You are not in control of the weather. You are not in control of all the different things that happens. You are in control of how you respond to that. The problem is we think we're in control of that, and then we don't think we're in control of this. We've mixed the two up. So let's realign. You are in control of you. You are not in control of this.
Yes, so, absolutely. Well, and I know. I love it. It's one of my favorite subjects also, because it's basically, if you know the parts of the brain, right? Yeah. And what's actually happening is when a lot of people let their amygdala, they let it control way too much, which is your caveman brain. That's what I like to call, that is your caveman brain. It's your fight or flight. And so instead, we really need to get that sophisticated part of our brain to take control. And you got to stop letting that caveman part of your brain take control. So you're 100% right in that, where you need to make that choice. You need to really make that choice to take control of your mind and your thoughts, and don't let your brain run wild, pretty much.
Yeah. And I think the reason why we avoid that is because taking control of your mind can't be found through tips and tricks. You can't search for it on Google. You can't find it on a webinar. You can't find it on a podcast. Taking control of your mind is the deep work that you have to do behind closed doors that nobody sees, that is rigorous, that is hard, that is messy, that is ugly, that is so deeply hard and so beautiful on the other side.
Absolutely.
And people just want the quick fixes. And guys, it doesn't exist. This podcast is not about it. I'm not giving you any quick fixes here. Like, we're going to have really hard conversations.
Yes. And I so agree with you. I mean, it's the same concept as if you want to run a marathon, you can't just get up one morning, not exercise at all, and then decide to just go run a marathon tomorrow. Your brain is a muscle. You've got to train it. It takes training. It takes work. It takes dedication. And it takes that time that you have to set aside, just like you would to train for a marathon.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about leadership here and conflict. So I'll give like a couple of common scenarios, and I'm sure you could resonate this and whoever's listening as well. The people pleaser and the perfectionist side shows up drastically more in our childcare centers and in our preschools because they are 99% led by females.
Yes.
And so as females, we are trained by society from a very young age to perfect, to perform, to show up, to take care, to nurture, to provide, to be a human outputting machine for all of the people that are in our life. And when we are consistently doing that, we are programmed to consistently do that for our staff also. And we sometimes default to thinking that, okay, the teacher asked for a paper towel. Oh, I should stop what I'm doing and run right away to give the teacher the paper towel, instead of recognizing that it's okay to tell someone, hang on one second, I'll be with you in a couple of minutes. And that comes from the driving perfectionism. That comes from the people pleasing. So when it comes to conflict, the question that you actually want to be asking is not, how do I get my staff to do this? The question you need to be asking is, how do I come to a center of homeostasis and calmness and quiet my mind so that when somebody asks me a question, I lead with empathy, with accountability, and not with, just reactivity.
Right. Absolutely. One of my mottos is always to be proactive instead of reactive. It's so much easier to prevent a fire than putting fires out all the time. But so I so agree with you on that. It just, and also just being a leader instead of just a manager, really transcending from that manager mindset to just constantly managing and micromanaging and all those things that don't work, to becoming a true leader that inspires people to really want to follow you.
I want to talk about this for a second about manager versus leader, because I had a very interesting personal realization about myself in the last year that I've kind of elevated to having a team and really elevating into CEO of the company. I am a horrible manager. I do not know how to manage people. I either micromanage or I undermanage. I do not. So it's not that I don't know how, I don't want to learn how to be a better manager. I am a really good leader. I know how to coach. I know how to inspire. I know how to show people what's possible for themselves. I show them a future version of themselves. I have a manager on my team. She's a director of operations. She manages the team with KPIs, with metrics, all of those things. I'm not good at that. I will choke someone to death sometimes in micromanaging them. And so I've just stopped doing it. I lead. So I think what's important to remember if you're listening to this is you actually might be a phenomenal manager and maybe you stay in that role. And someone else is the leader. But if you want to be a leader, you step into leadership, someone else manages. That doesn't mean you don't do any management. I do a little bit, but so little, because I am a leader. I'm not a manager.
I agree. And that's really what you were talking about earlier, also about self-awareness. It is so important to know, who are you? And I mean, you and I are both probably the A-type personalities. We both are.
Totally.
Exactly. So I'm the same way. I'm a leader. I'm not a manager, but I have an excellent manager leading my company. What I actually like to refer to her as, and you and I both belong to the same business coaching company, the Unstoppable Entrepreneur. And it's what our coach Kelly Roach teaches all the time is there's a difference between the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. And I think that is great for owners out there listening. It's something you really need to think about also, where we are the entrepreneurs, our directors are our intrapreneurs, and so we have to teach them that the job of an intrapreneur is just as important and it can be just as lucrative as the job of an owner. And that's something we have to embrace also as leaders. And if you're one of the intrapreneurs out there, that's wonderful. You are very necessary to the organization. And that is just a huge compliment to have those strong teams.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit further into the perfectionism and the people pleasing, because I think I want to get some practical strategy also when it comes to that kind of stuff. So when perfectionism and people pleasing is the filter from which you make decisions, again, it is a choice. So it is the filter that you have chosen to make decisions through. What you want to do is choose a different filter. So you want to say, I am not going to filter my responses through my weakness of people pleasing and perfectionism. I am going to choose a filter of the core values of our company. And so I am going to make decisions through the values. And the values of our company are gratitude, personal responsibility, integrity, respect, kindness, whatever it is. Okay, well, how does a leader who values integrity answer that question? Let me tell you, girlfriend, she doesn't answer it like a people pleaser.
Yes.
He doesn't answer it like a people pleaser. Like, let's be, I'm going to be New York here right now for you, even though I live in Florida. Like, you got to cut the bullshit. Like, you have to step up and say, what are the core values? So
I totally agree. And that's values are so very important. It's one of the first things I teach my clients. Like, we got to know your values. If you don't know your values, how are you hiring? How are you leading? How, you're not, that's, I think that's one of the number one reasons people really have a hard time with staffing their centers is they don't know their own values. So they don't know who they're hiring. They aren't recruiting the right people. They're not looking in the right places. And they're also not developing their center based on those values. So I know you teach a lot about culture that ends up creating a culture for the center that is usually just pretty negative.
It's disjointed. It's very disjointed because there's no unified of like, okay, we all care about these.
Yes.
These things are all super important to us.
Yes.
So to again, bring it back down to practicality is like, okay, if people pleasing is driving this decision, how does a leader who values this make these choices? Yes. And so if you're the director, maybe you didn't create the core values, or if you're the owner and you did create the core values, okay, is one of the values helping your team make decisions that isn't fueled by perfectionism and people pleasing?
Yes.
These are diseases. They are true diseases in our cultures. And to remove them and completely amputate them from the company, we have to have the values driving the difficult conversations. So if personal responsibility is a huge value in our company, well, when I'm going to have a difficult conversation with someone, I am going to lead with that. I'm going to lead with the concept that this is your responsibility. And I know that it's hard, and I know that this is really uncomfortable, and I need you to own this part. I'm going to own my part, and I need you to own your part. And we are so afraid to not be liked. We are so afraid to be outcasted. We become the 13-year-old girl who just wants to sit at the lunch table with the cool kids.
Right.
And being a leader is not sitting at the lunch table with the cool kids.
Right.
You are the leader. And as much as you want them to be your friends, you are the leader. And that is it's hard, guys. It's hard.
It is hard. I just had a conversation with one of my clients last week about this very thing where a lot of her employees, they're going to the owner and complaining about the director, basically saying that she's mean, she's keeping them accountable. I mean, that's basically what the director's doing. And the owner was just like, what do I do? Like, she's doing her job. They're complaining about her because she's holding them accountable and she's doing her job. So sometimes it is hard for the directors out there to do their jobs, especially if you have an owner that is so fixated on the people pleasing that they're not seeing that sometimes the director has to do those hard things that makes them unpopular. They have to hold their team accountable. And that does make you unpopular sometimes. And that does make you not always liked. You're respected. It's very important to keep that respect level, but sometimes your staff isn't going to like you. And so for owners out there speaking to you, if you've got that mentality of people pleasing, your director really needs you to come alongside them and understand and know that managing your team is going to take some unpopular decisions sometimes.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because many times the owner sabotages the culture because they want everyone to like them. So they're an offsite owner. They come on, they want, they're basically the celebrity. They come in.
Yes.
Everybody loves them. They didn't need to hold anyone accountable. They come in with the paychecks. Like everyone loves them, right? It's awesome.
They give the bonuses.
They give the bonuses. They give the raises. They get to be grandma. Like, they come with the candy and the chocolate and all the fun stuff, right? And that is really disheartening to a director who just had to sit through 2 hours of like a crying session and a bullying session and a blaming session and all of this stuff. And so while you take good care of her, what's really important to remember is that are your actions subconsciously sabotaging the director's pursuit of excellence and building accountability into the culture? So I think that's a great question, Evelyn, just being reflective. Like, if you're an owner and listening to this, ask yourself, do some of the behaviors that I do subconsciously sabotage my director's pursuit in building an accountable culture?
Right. Yep.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely just a huge thing I see with my owner clients when we work with the owner and director team in that sabotage. And I don't know, it always seems to come down to that people pleasing. The staff goes to the owner because they know the owner has that bleeding heart and they just feel sorry for him, and they come with that one situation, that one, like, yes, I was an hour late to work yesterday, but my dog. And what the owner's not seeing is, what about last month? What about the month before that? And the 5 other incidents. It's always something. But the owner just gets fixated on that. Oh, you poor thing. Let me make you happy.
Mhm.
And you just end up burning out and sabotaging your directors. So, something really important to keep in mind.
Yeah. So to just give a strategy on that for the owner is you want to create a standard in the company around what teachers are allowed to come to you with. And so I know this is going to sound really harsh for someone who's like, oh, but I have an open door policy. No, that's a myth. Stop saying I have an open door policy. You need to create boundaries around what comes to
Mhm.
you. And so
Absolutely.
teachers are not allowed to come to you to complain about I came late or this or that or any of that kind of stuff. Like, we need to create standards around who sits in what lane. And don't say I have an open door policy. You can come talk to me about anything. When they come to you, it's like, I'm really glad you brought this to my attention. This is actually something that, Director Amy deals with. So please make sure to have a conversation with her. Oh, but I
Yes.
like her.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about it. I know, I understand.
Yes.
And Amy's in charge of this. So I really need you to talk to her. Is there anything else
Yes.
you need to speak to me about today?
Absolutely.
And it sounds harsh, but you're putting a boundary and you're protecting your company by saying that.
Yes. Yep. And that's another whole other conversation we should have
Whole
one
separate
day.
conversation.
I
Yes.
know we have so many different ones, but that's
Yes,
where you
yes,
need an organizational chart. You need to
yes,
educate your staff on it. They should know the chain of command
yes.
that, like, just, and something we don't see enough of in our industry, where you stick to that chain of command and you don't really allow that variation. From people should not go from an assistant director straight to the owner. There is the absolute chain of command that needs to be followed, which
Yeah.
is why a lot of my listeners and your listeners need to work with one of us, because they don't have those business structures in place,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
So
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So let's kind of just bring a couple more ideas here, and then we'll kind of
yes,
wrap up, because this, again, we could talk forever.
right.
So in the perfectionist side, um, just like there are maintenance practices to maintain your life. So you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you change the oil in your car, you go to the gym. Now we have to mow the lawn every month, all of that kind of stuff, right? These are monotonous maintenance practices
Mhm.
that if you want to maintain your house and maintain your body's health, you need to do those tasks every single day, no matter what. It doesn't get to be, oh, today I'm not brushing my teeth, right? My son, wishes he could like trade cards. Like, today's no shower day, today's no teeth day, today's no day.
Right.
Like, he wants to kind of like, referee
Yep.
cards. And it's like, no, sorry, dude,
Nope.
brushing teeth, it's an everyday thing.
Everyday thing.
Cleaning
Yep.
your hair, it's an everyday thing. Like, those are not up for conversation. Those are everyday
They're
tasks.
non-negotiables. Yep.
Non-negotiables. So as a leader, when you're struggling with perfectionism and people pleasing, there needs to be practices for how you slowly start to learn how to let go of those things.
Yes.
And so some of those practices are choosing stress releasing activity and calming activity.
Yeah.
And every day you need to have both. Every day you need to have practices that release the stressors of the day. And every day you need to have practices that invite calmness, homeostasis, right? Not operating from the amygdala, as Evelyn, as
Yes.
you just said before. So starting your day off with that and kind of ending the day off with some of those stress releasing activities. So when you come home, the people that you love don't get the leftovers. They actually
Right.
get the beautiful, beautiful side
Yes.
of you.
Yes. And it doesn't take long. So I know a lot of people
No.
think I don't have time to do this, but honestly, it can take a minute. It
Yep.
doesn't have to take that long. Before you get out of your car, you can do something really quick to center yourself before you walk in your house, before you go to sleep. It really can take 1 to 5 minutes. It
Yep.
doesn't have to be a 30-minute yoga session.
No. So I'll just give a couple of my quick ones because I'm also super busy. I got 4 kids under 10. I don't have a lot of time either, guys. So some of my stress releasing activities is we have a basketball hoop over here on the driveway. I'll do 10 minutes of basketball, literally just build up a sweat, pull everything out of me. And it's amazing. 10 minutes, 5-minute run, just running back and forth in the backyard, literally just running back and forth. We live here in Florida, so I can also go swimming. Sometimes I'll do that. So any type of physical release or activity releases the stress hormones, the cortisol from your body. The calming activities are invite anything that works for you, whether that's calming music, meditation, gratitude,
Yeah.
just any of those things. And again, 1 to 5 minutes, just start
Yeah.
with something like that. And remind yourself, if I don't have time to center myself, how can I expect my team not to feel
Yes.
chaotic, uncentered, broken,
Yes.
shattered? Like, you are in charge.
Yeah.
Your energy leads the day. So
Right.
I think this is such a great place to kind of.
And your family also, absolutely. To wrap it up, I totally agree with you. And it's for your family also, because when you get home at the end of the day, you want to be the best version of yourself for them. And this will help you to be the best version of yourself as a leader for your team and also for your family. So it has been awesome. And I know you and I could talk. We'll have to do it again for sure, because we could just talk for hours probably.
Yeah.
So I
know you have to come join me on my podcast for sure. We're going to do one
for sure.
Yeah.
And I know you have an event coming up. So why don't you tell my listeners about that?
Yeah. So we have an exciting workshop coming up. It's called the Build to Last Workshop. And it's all about the 3 sustainable pillars for school leadership, which is mindset, time, and culture. And so during this workshop, we're really going to be unpacking the mindset skills that you need, the time management skills that you need, and what it takes to really build and sustain a culture of excellence. So it's a free workshop. We're so excited to have people join us. And thanks so much for just for this conversation. I always appreciate it. I think for me, it up-levels my mindset. It up-levels my ability to have these conversations. And so I appreciate it so much. And the link to the Built to Last workshop will be in the show notes for you guys.
Yes, I will put all of your links in our show notes. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, or if you want to find Connie, everything will be in the show notes for you. So again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Evelyn. Thanks, everyone.